My lungs felt like they were being crushed by an invisible hand. Icy snow filled my mouth and nose. Every futile gasp was a searing, knife-like pain. The vertigo and the impact of the fall still lingered at the edges of my nerves. I could feel my life draining away with my body heat. At the edge of my vision, standing over my bleeding body, were the two of them, my beloved husband, Ryan, and the photographer he called his best friend, Jessica. Their figures were dark silhouettes against the pure white background, cold and cruel. Ryan saved me. I used my last ounce of strength, but only a faint whimper escaped my throat. Ryan didn't move. He didn't even hesitate. I saw him raise a hand to gently tuck a strand of Jessica's hair, blown loose by the wind, behind her ear. She leaned in and whispered something to him. Jessica smiled, a smile that seemed especially blinding in the thin air. So all the romance was just a path leading to my death. This whole dream trip he'd meticulously planned to the snowy mountains of Aspen to shoot our wedding photos was really about making his dream come true. A dream of him and his old flame finally being together. The feeling of suffocation intensified, and my consciousness began to fade. Just as I thought everything was about to go dark. With a jolt, I shot up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs as if trying to break free. I gasped for air, taking in the familiar bedroom, the warm lamplight, and the soft silk of my pajamas. It was all too real to be a dying hallucination. I touched my face. It was smooth and warm, with no trace of ice or snow. I looked down at my hands. They were slender and pale, not the purple-blue color they'd been, frozen in the snow. The digital clock on my nightstand read 10:30 p.m. I had been reborn. I was back to the night before we were supposed to leave for Aspen. With a soft creak, the bedroom door opened. Ryan walked in carrying a glass of warm milk, his face wearing that gentle smile I used to be so infatuated with. "Chloe, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare?" He handed me the milk and asked with concern, "You look pale. Are you just too excited? We leave tomorrow." I looked at him, at this handsome face I had loved for 5 long years. This was the same face that had watched me die in a pool of my own blood, completely indifferent. My stomach churned, and I fought back the urge to vomit. I took the glass, my fingertips turning white from how hard I was gripping it. Yeah, a little excited. I lowered my head to hide the raging hatred in my eyes, my voice carrying just the right amount of tremor. "I dreamed that we got separated. It scared me a little." "Silly girl. How could we get separated when I'm with you?" Ryan sat on the edge of the bed and pulled me into a hug. His embrace was as warm as ever, but to me, it felt bone-chillingly cold. He gently patted my back, as if soothing a frightened kitten. "Oh, right, Chloe," he said, as if suddenly remembering something. He picked up a folder from the nightstand. "There's a document I need you to sign." I looked up and saw the words "Accidental Injury Insurance Policy" on the folder's cover. My heart clenched. "What's this?" I asked, feigning confusion. "We're going to a high-altitude area this time, and the roads can be tricky. I'm always worried, what if? So I bought an insurance policy, just for peace of mind." He opened the folder, pulled out the policy, and pointed to the beneficiary line. With a half-joking tone he said, "See? The beneficiary is me. If anything happens to me, you'll be a rich little lady." Of course, the reverse is also true. He said that last sentence so casually, but I heard it crystal clear. The reverse meant that if I died, he would get a $2 million payout. In my past life, I was so moved by his supposed deep affection at this moment that I signed my own death warrant without a second thought. I even said something stupid like, "I don't want to be a rich little lady. I just want you." But now, "Ryan, you're so good to me," I said, looking up with tears of gratitude welling in my eyes. My voice choked with emotion. "You're always so thoughtful. We're husband and wife. Who else would I be good to?" He smiled, satisfied, and handed me the pen. I took the pen, and a tear fell at the perfect moment, landing right on the paper and blurring a small patch of ink. I frantically tried to wipe it away, but that only made the smudge bigger, conveniently obscuring the string of zeros after the policy amount. "Oh no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that," I said, looking at him apologetically. Ryan's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly, but he smoothed it out quickly. "It's fine. A little smudge doesn't affect its legal validity. Go ahead and sign. We need to get some rest for our early flight tomorrow." I nodded and wrote my name, Chloe Shaw, one stroke at a time in the signature box. The tip of the pen scratched against the paper, a sound like a final punctuation mark on my foolish past life. After signing, I handed the policy back to him and casually placed the pen, which had a built-in recorder, back into the pen holder on the desk. The memory of my murder was too vivid, and from the moment I was reborn, I had subconsciously started laying the groundwork for my survival. Every single word Ryan used to coax me into signing that fatal policy had been recorded. He carefully checked the signature, and once he was satisfied, he put the documents away. Just then his phone rang. It was his mother, Mrs. Chun. Ryan answered, his tone respectful. "Mom, it's so late. What's up?" From the other end, his mother's loud voice came through the receiver so clearly that I didn't need speakerphone to hear it. "Ryan, your brother found a new car he wants. It's $30,000. You see, she was asking for money again. In the 3 years we'd been married, my in-laws were a bottomless pit. My brother-in-law's job, the down payment on his apartment, even his daily spending money. His mom would ask us for all of it without a shred of shame. And Ryan was always the filial son, always telling me, Chloe, that's my mom and my brother. We should help if we can. In my past life, to protect our little family and to make him happy, I had practically emptied out the accounts my parents gave me when we got married. And what did I get in return? The knowledge that the first thing they thought of after my death wasn't sorrow, but how to divide up my inheritance. "Mom, we're leaving for Aspen tomorrow," Ryan said, sounding a bit troubled as he glanced at me. I immediately understood and leaned in, speaking loudly into the phone. "Mom, it's no problem. Ryan already told me about it. Leo buying a car is a big deal. Of course we should support him as his brother and sister-in-law. We'll wire you the money as soon as we get back from our trip." On the other end, his mom's voice immediately brightened. "Oh, our Chloe is so understanding. You two have fun, and be safe." After hanging up, Ryan looked at me gratefully and planted a kiss on my forehead. "Chloe, thank you for being so understanding. You're always so supportive." I snuggled into his arms, my smile docile and sweet. "We're a family, aren't we? A family. Ryan, his mother, and that brother-in-law I'd never even met. You all owe me, and I will collect every last cent with interest." That night, I slept soundly, because I knew the gates of hell were slowly swinging open for them. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the gap in the curtains. I opened my eyes to see Ryan already dressed, and standing in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting his tie. The light gave him a golden halo, making him look like the same gentle, charming man I had fallen for. "You're awake. Get up. Mom came over early to see us off. She even made your favorite soup dumplings." He turned and smiled at me, his face full of anticipation for the trip. I sneered internally, as if his mom would be so kind. She was just here to put on a show of a loving mother-in-law to secure that $30,000. I got up, washed my face, changed, and went downstairs. Sure enough, Ryan's mom was sitting on the living room sofa, her face wreathed in smiles. The moment she saw me, she greeted me warmly. "Chloe, you're awake. Come eat while it's hot. It's tough at high altitudes, you need to eat more." She pushed a steaming basket of soup dumplings in front of me. So attentive I could almost believe we were a genuinely loving mother and daughter-in-law. "Thanks, Mom." I sat down, picked up a dumpling, and took a small bite. The scalding broth burst in my mouth, as savory as ever. But I just felt sick. "Mom, don't worry about the $30,000 for Leo's car. We'll transfer it to him as soon as we get back," I said, bringing it up proactively while looking her in the eye. Her smile immediately grew wider. She patted my hand affectionately. "Oh, our Chloe is so thoughtful. Ryan is so lucky to have married you. It must be a blessing from 8 lifetimes ago." Ryan, listening from the side, also looked pleased. He loved seeing me act so sensible, loved my unconditional devotion to his family. It fed his vanity as the man of the house. "Oh, right," his mom said, as if suddenly remembering something. She took a good luck charm out of her purse and handed it to me. "I went to the temple to get this for you too, to bless you with a safe trip. Chloe, you're not as strong, so you have to be extra careful at high altitude." I looked at the crudely made charm, a chill spreading through my heart. In my past life, she had given me an identical one. And when Ryan pushed me off that cliff, I was wearing this so-called safety charm around my neck. How ironic. Thank you, Mom. That's so thoughtful of you. I smiled, took it, and put it around my neck. After breakfast, we left for the airport. Along the way, Ryan was exceedingly considerate, opening the car door for me and fastening my seatbelt. He performed every detail flawlessly, like a perfect husband lost in love. If I hadn't lived through the despair of my past life, I might have fallen for his woven web of tenderness all over again. The car radio was playing a love song, with lyrics about love lasting until the end of time. Ryan held my hand and hummed along affectionately. I turned to look at the streetscape flashing by outside the window. Ryan, I thought silently, our end of time is waiting at the top of that mountain. When we got to the airport, I spotted a familiar figure right away. Jessica was dressed in a sleek windbreaker, a huge camera bag on her back, waiting for us at the check-in counter. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw Ryan. But her expression quickly became professional and distant when her gaze fell on me. Mr. Chun, Miss Shaw, you're here. Jessica, how many times have I told you? Don't call me Mr. Chun. Just call me Ryan, he said with a smile, his tone carrying an unmistakable intimacy. I can't do that. Work is work, Jessica replied, lowering her eyes, though the corners of her mouth lifted slightly in a coy gesture. What a show of unspoken, mutual affection. I acted as if I hadn't noticed a thing and walked up, enthusiastically linking my arm with hers. Jessica, this is going to be so much work for you. I've always loved your photography. We're so lucky to have you shooting our wedding photos. My warmth caught her off guard. She gave a stiff smile. You're too kind, Miss Shaw. Oh, you're friends with Ryan, so don't call me Miss Shaw. Call me Chloe. I smiled with pure innocence, as if I were a simple, naive girl completely in the dark. Ryan was clearly pleased to see us acting like the best of friends. This would lower my guard as much as possible, making it easier for them to execute their plan on the mountain. While checking our bags, I noticed Ryan specifically told the staff that 2 pieces of luggage needed special handling, because they contained medical equipment. I knew what it was. It was the tool he had prepared to kill me. 2 tanks of high-concentration medical oxygen. In my past life, he used the excuse that I was weak and needed oxygen at high altitude to lure me to a remote cliff. A detailed plan for revenge quickly formed in my mind. I clutched my stomach and said to Ryan, Ryan, my stomach feels a little upset. I need to run to the restroom. You guys wait here for me. Go ahead, take your time, Ryan said, not suspecting a thing. I walked quickly toward the restrooms, then ducked into a travel gear rental shop at the corner. The shop offered all sorts of outdoor equipment, including oxygen tanks for high altitudes. I went to the counter and said to the clerk, Hi, my husband, Ryan Chun, reserved 2 medical oxygen tanks. I just wanted to confirm. The clerk checked his computer and nodded. Yes, a Mr. Chun reserved 2 5-liter tanks. They're ready for him. Here's the thing, I said, putting on a troubled expression. My husband is a major germaphobe, especially with things that go near his mouth. He just saw you have brand new, shrink-wrapped empty tanks on the shelf. He was wondering if we could swap the reserved oxygen for those new tanks instead? He thinks it's more hygienic. We can just get them filled when we get there. The clerk looked a little confused. Ma'am, our oxygen tanks are all professionally sterilized. They're very clean. I pulled $500 from my wallet and discreetly slid it across the counter. I know, but it's just one of his quirks. Could you please do me this favor? Otherwise, he'll be complaining about it the whole trip, and my honeymoon will be ruined. Seeing the money, the clerk's attitude immediately changed. He took the cash and smiled. No problem. The customer's request is our command. I'll go swap them for 2 brand new empty tanks right now, shrink wrap and all. Thank you so much. I let out a long sigh of relief. A few minutes later, I confirmed that 2 identical-looking but completely empty oxygen tanks had been tagged with Ryan's reservation and put back in their spot. After seeing this, I returned to the check-in counter. Ryan and Jessica were talking in low voices, but they immediately separated when they saw me coming back. What took you so long? Ryan asked. There was a line, I answered naturally. Then I turned to Jessica and warmly pulled out our boarding passes. Jessica, I just checked our seats, and we weren't sitting together. I asked the staff to switch them. This way, we can sit together and chat. I have so many questions about photography to ask you. I tucked the new boarding pass into her hand, giving her no chance to refuse. Jessica's face changed slightly, and she instinctively glanced at Ryan. Ryan was also taken aback for a second but quickly recovered, smoothing things over with a laugh. Chloe's just so friendly. Jessica, just chat with her for a bit. It'll keep her from getting bored. And just like that, with slightly stiff expressions on both their faces, I smiled and walked through the boarding gate. Ryan, Jessica, your flight to hell is now boarding. I hope you enjoy the trip. The plane flew smoothly at 30,000 feet. Outside the window was a sea of cotton candy clouds. I leaned back in my seat, pretending to rest with my eyes closed, but I was actually listening carefully to the person next to me. Jessica sat beside me, radiating unease. She tried to speak several times, seemingly looking for an excuse to switch seats, but she held back, probably because of my earlier over-the-top friendliness. Meanwhile, Ryan sat across the aisle from her. I could feel his frequent glances, tinged with a subtle anxiety. I smirked. They were probably exchanging looks, complaining about my cluelessness for messing up their plan to bond during the flight. Jessica, are you a little nervous? I suddenly opened my eyes and looked at her with concern. I think your palms are sweating. Startled, Jessica quickly pulled her hands back and gave an awkward laugh. No. Maybe it's just a little stuffy in the cabin. Really? I feel fine, I said with a smile, pulling my blanket a little tighter. By the way, Jessica, you and Ryan have known each other for a long time, right? He mentions you to me all the time. He says you were his best friend in college and the most talented photographer he knows. I deliberately emphasized the words best friend, watching her reaction. Sure enough, a flicker of resentment and jealousy crossed Jessica's eyes, but she quickly hid it. Ryan exaggerates. We were just old classmates. I really envy your friendship, I continued, playing the part of the naive wife. Ryan said that for our wedding photos, only you could capture the feeling he wanted. He said you understand him best. Those words were like a needle, piercing right through Jessica's heart. The calm facade she was trying to maintain finally cracked. Right, the person who understands him best, but why is she now just a friend and a photographer, here to witness his wedding to someone else? She forced a smile and didn't reply. I didn't press further. A hint was enough. All I needed to do was quietly chisel a crack in their solid alliance. The plane landed at the high-altitude airport. The moment the cabin doors opened, a thin, dry, and cold air rushed in. I took a deep breath, feeling that familiar yet strange sensation. In my past life, this thin air had hastened my death. This time, it would be the weapon for my revenge. Many passengers were showing signs of altitude sickness, their faces pale and their breathing labored. Because I had started taking medication a week in advance, I was feeling pretty good. Ryan and Jessica, however, had clearly not prepared. Their faces turned visibly pale, and beads of sweat formed on their foreheads. Chloe, how are you feeling? Ryan asked, panting. His own lips were already turning a light shade of purple. I'm fine, I feel great. I looked at him innocently. Ryan, you look terrible. Are you having a reaction? I'm fine, he insisted. Jessica's condition was even worse. She was leaning on her suitcase, barely able to stand. I showed just the right amount of concern, pulling a portable oxygen canister from my bag and handing it to Ryan. Here, take a few puffs. We haven't gotten our checked oxygen tanks yet. Ryan didn't take it. He pushed it toward Jessica. Jessica, you use it first. Jessica didn't refuse. She immediately took it, pressed the mask to her face, and took several deep breaths. Her pale face finally regained a little color. I took in the whole scene with a cold smile. Ryan, your deep affection is always on display. It's just a shame the leading lady is never me. At baggage claim, Ryan eagerly found the 2 suitcases with his name on them. Inside were the gifts he had prepared for me. 2 empty oxygen tanks. He handed one of the suitcases to me, his voice so gentle it could drip honey. Chloe, you take this one. It has the oxygen tank I prepared for you. If you feel unwell, you can use it anytime. Thanks, honey, I cooed, accepting the heavy, deadly package. Our hotel was in the city, the best 5-star hotel in the area. In my past life, Ryan and I spent our last night here. The very next day, he took me up the mountain. After checking in, Ryan immediately collapsed onto the bed, gasping for air. His altitude sickness was worse than Jessica's. I pretended to be anxious as I opened the suitcase and took out the brand new oxygen tank. Ryan, quick, breathe some oxygen. You'll feel better. He struggled to sit up, took the tank, skillfully twisted the valve, and put the mask on his face. But after taking a few deep breaths, his face filled with utter confusion. What's going on? Why isn't there any air? He took off the mask and tried again in disbelief. Still nothing. How can that be? I leaned in, pretending to inspect it. Is the valve broken? Mine is new too. Maybe you should try mine. I took my own tank out and handed it to him. Ryan took it and twisted the valve. Same result. His face grew even uglier, half from lack of oxygen and half from the anger and panic of his plan being disrupted. The high-concentration medical oxygen he had spent a fortune on turned out to be 2 empty tanks. How could this happen? What's wrong with that rental company? He fumed, pulling out his phone to file a complaint. Ryan, don't worry, I said, placing my hand on his to calm him down. Maybe something happened during transport. Let's not worry about it for now. The hotel should have oxygen services. I'll go ask the front desk. You just lie down and rest. As I spoke, I took a box of special high-altitude sickness medication from my bag. A doctor friend of mine prepared this for me. Take this, it'll make you feel much better. Ryan's head was splitting, and he was in no state to think. He took the pills and swallowed them with water. After settling him in, I immediately went to Jessica's room next door. Her door was ajar. Ryan must have texted her to leave it open. I knocked gently. Jessica? Are you okay? I peeked my head in. Jessica was lying listlessly on the bed. Seeing me, she managed a weak smile. I'm okay, just a little dizzy. I brought you some medicine, I said, walking in and handing her the same pills. This stuff works really well. Take it and get some rest. Ryan took it too, and he's asleep now. Thank you, Chloe, Jessica said gratefully. Don't mention it. We're friends, right? I said with a smile. By the way, it seems like there's a problem with our oxygen tanks. They're empty. I've already asked the hotel to send up an oxygen concentrator. You just rest up. You have a big day tomorrow. With that, I left her room. Knowing they had both taken the special medicine I'd prepared, the smile on my face deepened. The medicine did indeed combat altitude sickness, but I had added a little something extra, an ingredient that dulled the nerves and caused mild limb paralysis in a low-oxygen environment. The dose was small, not fatal, but enough to make their reaction times half a beat slower at a critical moment. And half a beat is all it takes to decide between life and death. Ryan, Jessica, the stage I've so carefully set for you is about to be revealed. For now, enjoy your final moments of peace. The next day, the sky was a brilliant, clear blue. The distant snow-capped mountains gleamed with a holy light under the sun. After a night of rest and the help of the medication, Ryan and Jessica seemed to be in much better shape. They blamed the oxygen tank incident on the rental company's mistake and didn't suspect me at all. Chloe, how are you feeling today? If you're still not well, we can just rest at the hotel and shoot tomorrow, Ryan said before we left, playing the part of the caring husband as always. I'm fine, much better. We can't waste such beautiful weather, I replied with a happy smile, as if completely oblivious to the impending danger. We drove in an off-road vehicle, bumping along the road toward our shooting location at an altitude of 16,000 feet. As the altitude climbed, the air grew thinner, and the scenery outside became more magnificently desolate. Ryan and Jessica's faces began to turn pale again. Even with the medication, the physiological response was unavoidable. They exchanged glances from time to time, glances that held anticipation, nervousness, and a trace of something sinister. I leaned against the window, gazing at the endless mountain range, my heart completely calm. In my past life, I was filled with joyful anticipation for the photoshoot, imagining myself as the happiest bride in the world. This time, I was an avenger here to collect a debt of blood. Finally, we reached our destination, a wide, open snowy slope with a stunning view. In the distance was the majestic main peak, and at our feet was pristine white snow, A scene as beautiful as a fairy tale. This was the place where I had died. Jessica forced herself to perk up and began setting up her camera equipment. She was a true professional, quickly finding the best angles for the shoot. Ryan, Chloe, go stand next to that rock. Yes, right there, she directed. The photo shoot went smoothly. I wore a pure white wedding gown, linked my arm with Ryan's, and smiled radiantly for the camera. Ryan cooperated, hugging me, kissing my forehead, his eyes full of adoration. To any outsider, we were a match made in heaven. Only we knew what dark conspiracies and deep-seated hatred lay beneath the pristine wedding dress. Okay, let's get the last shot, Jessica said, panting. The activity at high altitude was taking a toll on her. Chloe, walk to the edge of the slope and strike a pose like you're gazing into the distance. Ryan, you walk up slowly from behind and hug her. Here it was. The exact same script as my past life. I nodded, lifted my dress, and walked step by step toward the edge of the slope. The snow was thick underfoot, making a soft crunching sound. I could feel Ryan's footsteps behind me. 1 step, 2 steps, getting closer and closer. My heart began to race, not with fear, but with excitement. Just as he was about to reach me, just as he was about to extend that guilty hand, I pretended to trip on something. My body lurched forward as I let out an exaggerated scream. Ah! My fall was perfectly timed, just enough to dodge the hand he extended from behind. Ryan, his brain already sluggish from the lack of oxygen and the drugs, was completely focused on the forward motion of pushing me. My sudden fall made him lose his target and his balance. He staggered forward 2 steps, trying to steady himself, but the slippery snow gave him no purchase. Seeing this, Jessica cried out and instinctively rushed forward to grab him. But she herself was dizzy and unsteady from the altitude. Not only did she fail to save Ryan, but she was pulled down with him, and they tumbled together down the cliffside. It all happened in a flash. I lay on the snow and slowly turned my head, watching their 2 figures roll and crash down the not-so-steep but rock and ice-strewn slope, letting out muffled thuds and pained groans. The white skirt of my wedding dress spread out around me like a pure flower blooming in the snow. And in the distance, 2 filthy souls were paying the price for their sins. I slowly sat up, poured a cup of hot cocoa from my thermos, and took a small sip. The warm liquid flowed down my throat, chasing away the high-altitude chill. In my past life, I felt the ultimate cold and despair here. This time, I was tasting the sweetness of revenge. Ryan, Jessica, are you satisfied with the grave I've so carefully chosen for you? Their tumbling finally stopped. They lay on the slope, unable to move. Ryan's forehead was cut by a sharp rock, and blood flowed down, starkly visible against the white snow. Jessica seemed to have injured her leg and was clutching her knee, moaning in pain. They weren't dead. I knew the height and angle of this slope weren't fatal. I didn't want them to die so easily. I wanted them to live and face a judgment more painful than death. I leisurely finished the last of my hot cocoa, then stood up and straightened my slightly disheveled dress. Then, I put on an expression of extreme panic and terror and screamed with all my might. Help! Somebody help! Help! My voice echoed through the vast, empty mountains, sounding so helpless, so tragic. I took out the sat phone hidden in the pocket of my wedding dress and shakily pressed the emergency call button. Hello? Is this the rescue team? My husband and my friend they fell down the slope. Please come save them. Please. My voice trembled, but it was a real tremor, the tremor of pure, unadulterated excitement from my successful revenge. While waiting for the rescue team, I didn't stay idle. I carefully moved my body to avoid disturbing any evidence at the scene. The 2 empty oxygen tanks I had tampered with were now lying quietly next to Jessica's camera bag. They were the key props in their plan to murder me. Now they would become the ironclad evidence against them. I looked down at the 2 incapacitated figures on the slope. Ryan seemed to be trying to get up, but the slightest movement pulled at his wounds, making him grimace in pain. Jessica was crying out Ryan's name, her voice filled with fear and despair. How laughable. Not long ago they had stood here, coldly watching me die. Now the roles were reversed. They were the lambs waiting for slaughter. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures of them. In the photos, they looked pathetic, their expensive outdoor gear stained with blood and dirt, a stark contrast to the holy mountain behind them. These photos would be useful later. About half an hour later, the roar of a helicopter came from the distance. The rescue team had arrived. The helicopter landed on a flat area nearby, and several team members in orange rescue suits ran toward me. "Ma'am, are you okay? Are you injured?" the lead rescuer asked with concern. I immediately switched into victim mode, tears streaming down my face like broken pearls. I grabbed the captain's arm, my body trembling with fear. "I'm okay. It's my husband, and our photographer, they fell." My voice was so choked with sobs I could barely form a sentence. "Don't panic. Tell me slowly what happened," the captain said, gently calming me. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself, and began to recount the story I had so carefully rehearsed. We were taking wedding photos here. I think it was the altitude sickness. My husband and Ms. Jones, the photographer, they'd been saying they were dizzy and disoriented all morning. Just now, my husband suddenly said he saw a snow lotus at the bottom of the slope and insisted on going to pick it. I couldn't stop him. Ms. Jones went to talk him out of it, but then they slipped and rolled down together. As I spoke, I pointed to the 2 empty oxygen tanks. "We brought oxygen, but for some reason the tanks are empty. There's no air at all. They must have been hypoxic and started hallucinating." My story was perfectly plausible, attributing everything to an accident caused by altitude sickness. A wife in love, panicked after witnessing her husband's accident. It was the most normal reaction. The rescue captain listened to my account without a shred of doubt. He immediately radioed his team to begin the rescue. Soon Ryan and Jessica were brought up on stretchers. They had both suffered various external injuries, and combined with severe altitude sickness, they were only semi-conscious. As Ryan was being lifted onto the helicopter, he seemed to regain a little awareness. He saw me, his eyes filled with venom and confusion. He tried to say something, but the lack of oxygen prevented him from making a sound. He could only open and close his mouth in vain. I met his gaze, my face a mask of perfect worry and grief, but deep in my eyes was an icy taunt. "You didn't expect this, did you, Ryan? The hunting game you so carefully designed that the final prey was you." On the helicopter, I casually mentioned the $2 million insurance policy to the rescue captain. "My head is a mess right now. I just remembered that before we left, my husband insisted I sign a $2 million accidental insurance policy. The beneficiary is him. He said it was just for peace of mind, but now that I think about it, I'm so scared. What if this wasn't an accident?" I covered my face, curling into a ball like a helpless woman consumed by a terrible fear. Hearing this, the rescue captain's expression immediately became grave. A massive insurance policy, a bizarre accident. These elements were enough to raise the suspicions of any experienced rescuer or police officer. "Ma'am, don't worry. We will report all the details to our superiors. If there's really something wrong, the police will investigate," he reassured me. This was exactly the effect I wanted. I wanted this to stop being a simple accident from the very beginning. I wanted the cloud of murder to hang over Ryan and Jessica's heads, only this time, they were the suspects, and I was the innocent, pitiable victim. The helicopter took us directly to the best hospital in the city. As I watched Ryan and Jessica being wheeled into the emergency room, I collapsed to the floor and began to sob uncontrollably. My cries drew the attention of everyone around, doctors, nurses, other patients, and their families. Their eyes filled with sympathy. A doctor in a white coat came over to help me up. "Ma'am, are you okay? Please come sit down over here." I grabbed his white coat like it was a lifeline, choking out my words. "Doctor, please, you have to save my husband. We just got married. My performance was flawless." The image of a fragile, deeply in love new bride who had just suffered a terrible tragedy was instantly seared into everyone's mind. Ryan and Jessica were admitted to different rooms. Ryan had a mild concussion from his head injury, and Jessica had a fractured left leg. Both needed to be hospitalized for observation. I waited outside Ryan's room, tear tracks on my face, my eyes red and swollen, looking like a helpless, lost soul. I had already called his mother, Mrs. Chun. Based on my calculations, she should be arriving any minute. Sure enough, A flurry of hurried, chaotic footsteps echoed from the end of the hallway, accompanied by Mrs. Chen's signature loud voice. "My son. Where is my Ryan?" Mrs. Chen charged toward me like a hurricane, with Ryan's brother, Leo, trailing behind her. When she saw me, she froze for a second, then her face contorted with rage. She lunged forward and slapped me across the face. The sharp crack echoed in the quiet hallway. My face stung, but I didn't dodge or fight back. I just clutched my cheek, looking at her with disbelief. Tears welling up in my eyes, poised to fall but never quite dropping, the very picture of pitifulness. "You jinx. You bringer of bad luck," Mrs. Chen shrieked, pointing a finger at my nose. "I told you, you were bad for him. Ryan goes on one trip with you and ends up like this. Why didn't you die? How dare you still stand here?" Her tirade drew a crowd of onlookers. A few nurses rushed over. "Ma'am, please calm down. This is a hospital. Please be quiet." A head nurse tried to intervene, but Mrs. Chen wouldn't listen. She shoved the nurse aside and continued her assault on me. "It was you. You must have done something to my son. He was fine. How could he just fall off a mountain? Tell me, what did you do to him?" I let her scream at me, my body trembling with feigned hurt and fear. I didn't say a single word in my defense, just cried silently. To others, my silence and tears were the best proof of my weakness and innocence. "Mom, stop it wasn't Chloe's fault it was my own I was careless," came Ryan's weak voice from the hospital room. He hated me, but he knew better than to burn this bridge. He still needed me, his wife, to prove to the outside world that this was just an accident. Hearing her son's voice, Mrs. Chen immediately stopped her attack on me and threw herself onto his bedside, wailing, "Oh, my son. How are you? Does it hurt? Let mommy see." Just as everyone's attention was drawn to the mother-son drama in the room, I seized the moment. My body swayed, my eyes rolled back, and I collapsed backward. "Oh my God," she fainted. A bystander near me shouted. The scene descended into chaos. Nurses and doctors scrambled to lift me and carry me to an empty bed for an examination. An older female doctor checked my blood pressure and listened to my heart. She then turned to Mrs. Chun, who had just calmed down, and said with a frown, "Ma'am, your daughter-in-law is also suffering from mild altitude sickness and is under extreme emotional distress. Her body is very weak. As her mother-in-law, instead of comforting her, how could you lay a hand on her?" The doctor's tone was full of disapproval. The onlookers started whispering, "Yeah, that mother-in-law is so unreasonable. Look how heartbroken her daughter-in-law is. She must have been terrified. Having a mother-in-law like that is just the worst luck." In an instant, public opinion had swung completely to my side. Mrs. Chen's face flushed red with embarrassment. She opened her mouth, but couldn't find a single word to retort. She shot me a venomous glare, a look that wished it could swallow me whole. Lying on the gurney, I slowly opened my eyes and said weakly, "Doctor, I'm fine. My mother-in-law she was just worried about Ryan." This act of returning kindness for cruelty earned me even more sympathy. The doctor patted my hand gently. "You're a good child. You're just too kind. You need to rest now." And just like that, I was conveniently admitted to the hospital, in the room right next to Ryan's. The first battle was won, and I hadn't even had to draw my sword. Not only had I successfully painted myself as an innocent victim, but I had also cemented Mrs. Chen's image as a wicked mother-in-law in everyone's minds. From now on, whatever she said, people would automatically assume she was bullying me. Lying in the hospital bed, I closed my eyes and began to plot my next move. Ryan and Jessica were out of immediate danger, but their murder plot had failed, and they were both injured. They must be as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The thing they were most worried about now had to be that $2 million insurance policy. Sure enough, it wasn't long before there was a knock on my door. It was Ryan's brother, Leo. He walked in holding a bowl of chicken soup, a strange smile on his face. "Chloe, how are you feeling? Mom asked me to bring you some soup to help you recover." I looked at him and sneered internally. A wolf in sheep's clothing. "Thank you, Leo. And thank your mom for me," I replied politely. "Chloe, there's something my brother wanted me to ask you," Leo said, wringing his hands, hesitant to speak. "It's about that insurance policy. Here it comes." I looked at him with a blank expression. Insurance? What insurance? You know that the accidental insurance policy my brother bought for you before the trip. Leo reminded me carefully. Oh, that, I said, as if just remembering. My face then clouded with sadness. Leo, you have no idea how scared I was when I saw that policy. Now that this has happened, I tremble just thinking about it. I've already told the rescue team. They said they're going to ask the police to investigate. My words were like a bomb exploding next to Leo's ear. His face went ghostly white. Chloe. How could you call the police? It was just an accident. If you call the police, it will look so bad for my brother. I didn't want to. I sat up excitedly, tears streaming down my face again. But I'm scared, Leo. Why would Ryan buy such a huge policy for me the day before we left, of all times? And then the oxygen tanks were empty. It's all too much of a coincidence. I'm just a woman. What am I supposed to do? I have to trust the police. My performance perfectly captured the image of a terrified, helpless woman seeking protection. Leo was speechless. He knew he couldn't win this argument. He could only retreat with the bowl of untouched chicken soup. I knew he would report my words verbatim to Ryan and Mrs. Chun. And that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted them to know that things were spinning out of their control. I wanted them to panic, to make mistakes. The real show was just getting started. The next morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. A middle-aged man in a suit and tie with gold-rimmed glasses, followed by a female assistant holding a folder. He walked to my bedside and politely handed me a business card. Miss Shaw, hello. I'm Mr. Davis, a manager from the claims department at Liberty Mutual. We were notified by the rescue team and have come to understand the circumstances of your husband's accidental injury. I looked at the card and laughed inwardly. The Grim Reaper had arrived. Hello, Mr. Davis. I struggled to sit up. Please don't get up. Just lie down, Mr. Davis said gently, taking a seat by my bed. Miss Shaw, we just need to confirm a few details. Could you describe what happened one more time? I nodded and repeated the well-rehearsed story with emotion and flair. My account was full of details, the pauses, the choked sobs, and the jumbled sentences of a frightened wife reliving a traumatic experience. I had perfected every nuance. Mr. Davis and his assistant listened, taking rapid notes. And that's what happened. I finished with a shudder of lingering fear. Even now, it feels like a bad dream. If the rescue team hadn't come so quickly, I don't know what I would have done. Mr. Davis nodded and closed his notebook. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Shaw. We just have one last question for you. His eyes sharpened. We found that your husband, Mr. Ryan Chin, purchased a $2 million personal accident insurance policy for you the day before your trip. The beneficiary is himself. Were you aware of this? I looked at him, my eyes filled with the perfect blend of confusion and fear. I knew. My voice began to tremble. At the time, Ryan said it was for our own good, for peace of mind. I didn't think much of it and just signed. Mr. Davis, is there a problem? Mr. Davis didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, so regarding this accident, do you personally believe there might be any man-made factors involved? This was a critical question. My answer would directly influence the insurance company's investigation. I didn't answer immediately. I lowered my head, my hands gripping the blanket, my body trembling slightly, as if wrestling with a difficult internal conflict. After a long moment, I looked up, my eyes red. I don't know, I said, my voice weak but clear. I don't want to think about it. I only know that my husband loves me so much he would never hurt me. He wouldn't. My words said he wouldn't, but my expression, my tears, my trembling, everything about me screamed that I suspected him but was too scared to admit it. This hesitant, conflicted attitude was far more effective and devastating than a direct accusation. Mr. Davis gave me a long, deep look, as if he understood everything. Just then, I pretended to casually pick up my phone from the nightstand and tapped on an audio file. Chloe, go ahead and sign. Let's get some rest. Ryan's coaxing voice came clearly from the phone. Mr. Davis's ears perked up instantly. I hurriedly stopped the playback, a look of panic on my face. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. This is a recorder pen I use for lectures. I must have bumped it. I fumbled with the phone, trying to put it away. Miss Shaw, may I listen to that recording? Mr. Davis's tone became serious. I don't think that's a good idea, that it's a private matter between my husband and me, I said, feigning hesitation. Ms. Shaw, this could be related to your personal safety, and whether our company pays out this massive claim. Please, trust our professionalism. We will not leak it, Mr. Davis insisted, his tone leaving no room for argument. After a few rounds of feigned reluctance, I begrudgingly handed him the phone. Mr. Davis took it and listened to the entire 3-minute recording from beginning to end. The longer he listened, the deeper his frown became. In the recording, Ryan was persuasive and manipulative, constantly stressing for your own good and peace of mind, while I sounded like a naive woman, completely besotted and unsuspecting. When he finished, Mr. Davis's face was grim. Miss Shaw, he said, handing the phone back, his tone more serious than ever. Thank you very much for this information. Our company will investigate this matter thoroughly. Until the investigation is complete, any medical expense reimbursements and subsequent claims for Mr. Ryan Chin will be temporarily frozen. A wave of joy washed over me, but my face remained a mask of worry and fear. Mr. Davis, did I ask there really a problem? My husband, did he? What you need to do now is rest and protect yourself, Mr. Davis said, standing up. If anything else suspicious happens, please contact me immediately or call the police. After seeing the insurance investigators out, I let out a long breath. The first card had been played. Now Ryan would have to face not only police suspicion, but also a professional investigation from the insurance company. Insurance fraud, especially for $2 million, was enough to make them dig up every secret he had. Just as I was thinking this, my door was thrown open. Mrs. Chun stormed in like an angry lioness, followed by a pale-faced Ryan, leaning on a crutch with a bandage wrapped around his forehead. You bitch. What did you tell the insurance people? Mrs. Chun lunged at me, trying to grab my hair. I was prepared and immediately pressed the call button by my bed. I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. Still playing dumb. Ryan roared and raged. The insurance company just called and said they suspect me of fraud. They've frozen all my medical reimbursements. Was this your doing? I just told them the truth, I said flatly, including how you insisted I sign that $2 million policy the day before we left. You. Ryan was speechless with fury. Just then a nurse rushed in. Seeing the tense atmosphere, she immediately intervened. What are you doing? The patient needs to rest. Please leave immediately. Did you hear that? The doctor told me to rest, I said, looking at them with a faint smile. If you harass me again, I'm calling the police. Forced out by the nurse, Ryan and Mrs. Chun had no choice but to retreat, unwillingly. Watching their defeated backs, I knew our war had moved from the shadows into the open. After 3 days in the hospital, I was discharged. During that time, Ryan and Mrs. Chun didn't dare bother me again, but I knew they were secretly scrambling to deal with the insurance investigation. I didn't go back to that house full of hypocrisy and conspiracy. I went straight to my parents' home. My parents were heartbroken to see me looking so gaunt. I didn't tell them the whole truth, only that there had been an accident in the mountains and I was shaken. During my time recuperating at home, I wasn't idle. I began to execute the second part of my plan, detonating public opinion. What did Ryan care about most? Besides money, it was his reputation, the carefully crafted persona of a talented young professional and a model husband. So, I would personally tear off that mask he wore, piece by piece, and watch him shatter. I hired a private investigator to look into Jessica's background and her history with Ryan. At the same time, I contacted a well-known local relationship blogger. This influencer was famous for her sharp writing and willingness to expose scandals, with a following of hundreds of thousands, mostly married women my age. I created a new social media account, and under the guise of a wronged wife, anonymously submitted my story to the blogger. I crafted it into a tear-jerking saga. The title was, My Honeymoon, My Funeral. Husband takes out 2M policy for his mistress, then pushes me off a mountain. In the article, I detailed how a wealthy, love-struck girl married a man from a humble background against her family's wishes. After the wedding, she gave him everything, supported his career, and respected his family, only to be met with the cruelest betrayal. I portrayed Ryan as a calculating, greedy monster and Jessica as a scheming, home-wrecking villain. I, of course, was the innocent and pitiable victim. To add authenticity, I attached several pixelated photos. One of our happy wedding pictures, one of Ryan and Jessica whispering in a hospital hallway taken by my PI, and one of them looking battered and bloody on the mountain slope. The contrast between happiness and misery was starkly ironic. At the end of the article, I wrote in a desperate, helpless tone, "I don't know what to do. He is the man I love most in the world, and I can't believe he would do this to me. But the evidence is right in front of me, and I can't escape it. I'm writing my story not to ask for sympathy, but to warn all my sisters out there. Be careful who you marry." I revised the article several times, ensuring every word would provoke the maximum emotional response from readers, then hit send. All that was left was to wait. The blogger, clearly fascinated by this kind of high society drama, was incredibly efficient. The very next evening, my story was published as his top feature. The article exploded. It was like a bombshell dropped on the local social scene. The view count shot past 100,000 in just a few hours, and the comments section erupted. "Is this a true story? This is horrifying. That man is a monster. Killing his wife for money. The mistress is no better. A homewrecker and an accomplice to murder. I hope they both rot. The photos are blurred, but that guy's build and hairstyle look a lot like our company's CEO, Ryan Chen. OMG, you're right. I think he did take time off to go to Aspen for a wedding shoot recently. Whoa, major drama. Let's get the full story." The speed at which the story went viral far exceeded my expectations. Soon, Ryan's full name, his company, and Jessica's photography studio were all doxxed by internet sleuths. Ryan's phone was blowing up. His company's website was flooded with angry comments. Jessica's studio was vandalized with red paint, with the words murderer and mistress spray painted on her door. I watched the news notifications pop up on my phone without a flicker of emotion. "Ryan, this is just the appetizer. Everything you've worked so hard for, your career, your reputation, your future, is about to be reduced to ashes in this public frenzy." That night, I got a call from Ryan. His voice was filled with suppressed rage and panic. "Chloe, did you do this? Why would you do this? Are you trying to destroy me?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my tone still light and breezy. "I haven't been feeling well, just resting at home. I haven't been online much. Still playing dumb." He screamed hysterically. "Who else could it be? You venomous woman. I really underestimated you." "Ryan," I interrupted, my voice turning cold. "If you just called to yell at me, I'm hanging up. I'm tired. I need to rest. Don't hang up." He shouted desperately. "Chloe, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please listen to me. It's not what you think. Jessica and I are just friends. That insurance policy .it was just a coincidence." Even now, he was still trying to lie his way out of it. "Really?" I laughed softly. "Then go explain it to the police. Explain it to the insurance company. Explain it to all those people online cursing you out. It's no use telling me." With that, I hung up and blocked his number. I knew I had achieved my goal. From this moment on, I was no longer an isolated victim. I had turned public opinion into my army, and every stranger with a sense of justice had become a soldier in my crusade against him. In this hunt that I was directing, he had gone from hunter to cornered beast, and I would slowly tighten the noose until he suffocated. The pressure from public opinion was like an invisible mountain crushing Ryan and Jessica. Ryan's company stock plummeted, and the board of directors issued a severe warning. Jessica's studio was ruined, all her clients canceled, and she even faced lawsuits from previous ones. They had become pariahs in the city. I knew that under this immense pressure, their so-called love, built on greed and desire, would crumble. It was time to add more fuel to the fire of their already shaky alliance. The private investigator was efficient, and soon sent me Jessica's detailed file. It showed that she came from a modest background, and had worked hard for her success. She was a woman with immense pride and a deep-seated insecurity. Ryan had been a campus star in college, from a wealthy family, never short of admirers. A big reason he chose to be with me was because my father's company could help his career. Jessica had always been bitter about this, believing I had used my family's status to steal Ryan from her. A jealous and suspicious woman like her was the easiest fortress to breach. I used a new, anonymous burner phone to send Jessica a picture message. The picture showed Ryan drinking intimately with a pretty young girl at a bar. The girl was practically draped over him, laughing flirtatiously. I had paid the PI to Photoshop it, and it was seamless. The girl in the photo was a new intern at Ryan's company who bore a striking resemblance to a younger Jessica. Below the photo, I added a line of text. You think you won by getting rid of Chloe? Think again. To Ryan, you're just one of many options. Look at this new intern. Doesn't she look just like you did back in the day? Men are liars. He'd dump Chloe for money, and he'll dump you for a younger body. Good luck. After sending the message, I destroyed the SIM card. I knew the seed of doubt had been successfully planted in Jessica's mind. Now I just had to wait for it to sprout. As expected, that very night, I received a message from the PI. Jessica and Ryan had a massive fight in his hospital room. The investigator, posing as a delivery driver, had accidentally recorded a snippet of their argument from outside the door. In the audio, Jessica's voice was shrill and hysterical. Ryan, you better explain this. Who is this woman? Have you been cheating on me with her? Ryan's voice was filled with exhaustion and annoyance. Jessica, can you stop being so dramatic? I'm swamped right now. I don't have the energy for this. It's obviously a photoshopped picture, can't you see? Photoshopped? Then why her? Why does she look so much like I did when I was younger? Are you tired of me? Looking for a younger replacement? You're being irrational. Irrational? Ryan, I've been dragged through the mud for you. I've lost my career. And you? You're out having a good time. Do you have any idea what you've put me through? I told you it's fake. Believe it or not, I don't care. There was a loud crash, as if Jessica had thrown something. Then came her furious, tear-filled shout. Ryan, you bastard. We should have never gone after that psycho Chloe in the first place. Now look at us. We've lost everything. This recording was a gift from heaven. I immediately sent it to the relationship blogger. He treated it like gold and that same night, published another viral article with the headline, Plot Twist in Mountain Murder Case. Leaked audio reveals lovers turning on each other. In the article, the blogger analyzed the recording in detail, pointing out that Ryan and Jessica's relationship had fractured, and they were now blaming each other. Crucially, Jessica had admitted in the recording, we should have never gone after that psycho Chloe, which indirectly confirmed they had, in fact, been plotting against me. This article solidified their public image as villains. Any friends who still supported Ryan, or any bystanders who had doubted the story's authenticity, completely turned against them after hearing the recording. Ryan and Jessica's alliance, under the strain of my scheme, had completely disintegrated. They were no longer partners in crime but suspicious enemies, ready to stab each other in the back at any moment. A fortress that rots from within is not far from collapse. Seeing himself backed into a corner, Ryan and his mother finally snapped. They realized that rational explanations and denials were useless. So they resorted to the stupidest and most vicious tactic, a frantic smear campaign against me. Overnight, a flood of posts and articles attacking me appeared online. It was clearly the work of a professional troll farm. Their messaging was suspiciously uniform, and the content was as slanderous as it could get. Some posts claimed I was a spoiled rich girl who looked down on her in-laws and treated her mother-in-law with contempt. Others revealed that I had a promiscuous private life and had cheated on Ryan with a company executive, claiming I was now lashing out in revenge after being caught. The most venomous attacks used the fact that I had been unable to get pregnant. They claimed I was mentally unstable and bitter because I couldn't have children, and I couldn't stand to see others happy. They painted me as a tyrannical, promiscuous, and evil woman, while Ryan became the poor husband who had been cheated on and had to endure my irrational behavior. For a moment, the tide of public opinion began to shift. While most people were still on my side, some uninformed observers began to waver. There's no smoke without fire. If this woman was so innocent, why would her husband try to kill her? I think the husband's side of the story makes some sense. Who knows if this woman is just acting? It's a he said, she said situation. Maybe they're both terrible people. Reading these comments, I felt a deep chill. I knew this was Ryan's last-ditch effort. He was trying to drag me down into the mud with him, to muddy the waters and escape justice. Those few days were the first time since my rebirth that I felt immense pressure. My phone was flooded with abusive texts from unknown numbers. Some extremists even threw paint on my parents' front door, calling me a shameless harlot. My parents, worried for my safety, wouldn't let me leave the house. They watched me grow thinner each day, their hearts aching. "Chloe, maybe we should just let it go," my father said with a sigh, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. "We can't win against them. Let's just move. We can go somewhere no one knows us and start over." I held my father's hand and shook my head firmly. "Dad, if I back down now, I'm admitting to all their lies. I have to get justice not just for myself, but to clear your names, too." I knew this was the darkest hour before the dawn. I couldn't fall. If I fell, I would be playing right into Ryan's hands. I locked myself in my room for a full day, thinking about how to launch a decisive counterattack in this media war. Slander and insults were the lowest form of attack. To defeat them, I couldn't sink to their level that would only drag me into the mire. I had to use the most professional, authoritative, and irrefutable methods to make all their rumors collapse on their own. The next day, I contacted a law firm. Not just any small firm, but the top-ranked firm in the city, known for taking on and winning tough, complex cases. I met with their star lawyer, Ms. Miller, a sharp, rational woman in her 40s. I laid out all my evidence before her. The recording of Ryan coercing me to sign the policy, the audio of Jessica's meltdown, all the photos from the PI, and the evidence I had gathered of Ryan transferring marital assets. Ms. Miller reviewed everything carefully, then looked up at me, her eyes filled not with sympathy, but with admiration. "Miss Shaw, you are the calmest and bravest client I have ever met," she said. "We'll take this case. And we're not just going to win, we're going to win beautifully." We spent the entire afternoon strategizing a comprehensive counteroffensive. On the third day, a bombshell piece of news once again rocked the entire city. I, Chloe Shaw, was holding a press conference in my own name. The venue was Ms. Miller's law firm. On the day of the conference, I wore a well-tailored black suit, light makeup, and my hair was neatly tied back. I chose not to play the victim. No tears, no pleas for pity. I wanted respect and credibility. The conference room was packed, a forest of cameras and microphones. Every major media outlet in the city was there. Ryan, his mother, and even Jessica were surely glued to their screens, watching the live broadcast. I sat at the center of the speaker's table, flanked by my legal team, 3 top lawyers led by Ms. Miller. This powerful legal backing gave me unshakable confidence. When the conference began, I didn't waste a single word. I cut straight to the chase. "Good morning, everyone. I am Chloe Shaw. I am also the subject of the recent viral article, 'My Honeymoon, My Funeral.'" My voice was calm but carried through the microphones, each word landing with weight. I am not here today to ask for sympathy, or to engage in a war of words with certain individuals. I am here to respond to all the accusations and slander with evidence. With that, I gestured to Ms. Miller. She stood up, connected her laptop to the large screen in the room, and the $2 million insurance policy appeared, every clause and number clearly visible. "Please take a look," Ms. Miller said, pointing a laser at the screen. This policy was purchased the day before my client, Ms. Chloe Shaw, and Mr. Ryan Chin left for Aspen. The beneficiary is Mr. Ryan Chin himself. I'd like to ask, what loving couple buys such a massive insurance policy for their spouse, with themselves as the beneficiary, right before a honeymoon trip? A murmur rippled through the room. Next, Ms. Miller played the recording of Ryan pressuring me to sign. "Chloe, go ahead and sign. For our future." Ryan's gentle voice filled the room, now sounding utterly horrifying. "We have had a voice print analysis done on this recording, confirming it is the voice of Mr. Ryan Chin," Ms. Miller stated calmly. Then the screen showed Ryan's and Jessica's bank records. "According to our investigation, over the past 3 years, Mr. Ryan Chin has transferred a cumulative total of over $300,000 to Ms. Jessica Jones. The transactions were labeled as birthday gifts, travel funds, and even a $75,000 down payment assistance. I ask you, do normal friends have such frequent and large financial transactions? One piece of evidence after another was presented, each one a bombshell that left the reporters reeling. Finally, Ms. Miller played the audio of Jessica and Ryan's fight in the hospital. "Ryan, you bastard. We should have never gone after that psycho Chloe in the first place." Jessica's shrill voice echoed through the hall. That unwitting confession was the final nail in their coffin. After presenting all the evidence, Ms. Miller sat down. I took the microphone again. "Regarding the online rumors about my personal life, infertility, and other baseless claims, my legal team has already preserved evidence of all accounts that have published and spread these rumors." My gaze swept across the cameras, firm and cold. "I am hereby officially announcing my intent to sue all rumor-mongers for defamation, including my husband, Mr. Ryan Chun, and my mother-in-law, Mrs. Chun. Furthermore, I will be filing a lawsuit against Mr. Ryan Chun and Ms. Jessica Jones for emotional distress, seeking $2 million in damages. At the same time, I am officially filing for divorce. I demand that Ryan Chun be left with nothing." The moment I finished, the room erupted in a flash of camera lights. Reporters shot their hands up, clamoring to ask questions. I didn't give them the chance. I stood up, bowed deeply to all the cameras, and said thank you. I have said all I need to say. I will leave the rest to the law. Then, escorted by my lawyers and security, I turned and left the room, leaving behind the image of a calm and resolute woman. The press conference was a storm that swept through the city. All public opinion reversed in an instant. No one questioned me anymore. No one sympathized with Ryan. I had fought back and won a spectacular victory using the most professional and powerful means possible. I had shown everyone that Chloe Shaw was not a pushover. I was a modern woman who knew how to use the law to defend her dignity and rights. And Ryan, after watching that press conference, must have understood that his last, desperate counterattack had utterly failed. His judgment day was coming. The press conference had an immediate effect. The police and insurance investigations, bolstered by the solid evidence I provided, accelerated significantly. A key piece of evidence came from the airport gear rental shop. Under police questioning, the clerk recalled an important detail. A woman named Chloe had, on the day of departure, requested to swap the reserved oxygen tanks for new, empty ones, citing her husband's germophobia. This testimony briefly renewed the police's suspicion of me. However, at my lawyer's suggestion, the police retrieved the rental shop's phone recordings. The recordings clearly documented Ryan's call during the initial reservation, where he specifically instructed the clerk to prepare the 2 tanks I mentioned, the ones with the special markings. A special marking. It was an unwitting confession. A normal rental wouldn't require special markings. The police immediately brought Ryan in for an intense interrogation. Faced with overwhelming evidence and high-pressure questioning, Ryan's psychological defenses began to crumble. Meanwhile, my legal team was busy with another crucial task: gathering evidence of Ryan's transfer of marital assets. Ryan thought he had been seamless, but he underestimated me. In my past life, after his death, I had to handle all his affairs to pay off his massive debts. In the process, I had gone through almost all his documents and computer records. I knew how many companies he had, how many bank cards, and even his secret offshore accounts. After my rebirth, these memories became my sharpest weapon. Following the leads I provided, my legal team quickly discovered that just before leaving for Aspen, Ryan had transferred a sum of $750,000 in batches through various accounts into his mother's name. The transfer notes were varied, some said loan, others investment. But the largest transaction had a note with 2 chilling words: pension fund. Why would a man in his early 30s, at the peak of his career, be preparing a pension fund for himself? The act itself was ominous. This bank transfer slip became the last straw. Combined with the $2 million insurance policy and the recording of him coercing me, it formed a complete and clear chain of evidence pointing to one single, horrifying truth. Ryan had already made thorough preparations for my accidental death. He was already planning how to enjoy the blood-soaked fortune after I was gone. When my lawyer submitted this evidence to the police, I knew there was no way for Ryan to talk his way out of it. What awaited him was the law's fairest and harshest judgment. The day before the trial, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from Mrs. Chun. Her voice was no longer arrogant and bossy, but filled with weariness and pleading. Chloe, can we meet? I paused for a moment, then agreed. It wasn't because I felt sorry for her. I just wanted to see with my own eyes how this once arrogant woman had fallen. We met in a private room at a coffee shop. In just a few days, Mrs. Chen looked as if she had aged a decade. Her hair was streaked with gray. Her eyes were dull, and her face was lined with wrinkles. The air of a pampered woman was completely gone. When she saw me, her lips trembled. Then with a thud, she knelt before me. Chloe, I'm begging you. I'll kowtow to you, she said, actually bowing her head to the floor. Please let Ryan go. He's still young, he can't go to jail. I watched her silently, not helping her up, not saying a word. I know it was our fault, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Ryan, he was just confused for a moment. That vixen bewitched him. He didn't really want to hurt you, Chloe. For the sake of your marriage, please, forgive him this one time. Our marriage? I finally spoke, my voice as cold as ice. When he was pushing me off a cliff for money, did he think about our marriage? He said it was an accident. He just wanted to scare you. Mrs. Chen was still trying to argue. Scare me? I sneered. Was the $2 million insurance policy to scare me? Was the $750,000 pension fund also to scare me? Mrs. Chen's face went deathly pale. She couldn't believe I knew about that too. Chloe, if you drop the charges, if you tell the judge it was all a misunderstanding, we'll give you all our money. We'll give you our house too. I'll give you my retirement savings, all of it. Please. She clung to my leg, begging. Looking at her pathetic state, I felt no satisfaction, only an endless sadness. This was Ryan's mother, a woman who would twist the truth and abandon her dignity for her son. Her love was selfish, blind, and ultimately, one of the forces that pushed Ryan into the abyss. It's too late, I said, gently pushing her away and standing up. Mrs. Chen, what you should be doing right now is not begging me, but persuading your son to confess to his crimes and hope for a lighter sentence. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Mrs. Chen's pleading finally turned into a furious curse. She scrambled up from the floor, pointed at my nose, and revealed her true colors. Chloe, don't be so shameless. You think you've won? Let me tell you, even if my son goes to jail, you won't have it easy either. She shrieked, her face contorted. You're just a barren hen. It was our family's worst luck to have married a jinx like you. She was still using the most vicious words to attack me. I looked at her and suddenly found it laughable. Mrs. Chen, I said calmly, do you know that when Ryan proposed to me, my parents were against it? They thought he had bad intentions, that your family was a pit of fire. I was the one blinded by love, insisting on marrying him. I thought if I was good to him, good to you all, I could earn your genuine affection. I was wrong. So wrong. You people don't have hearts. With that, I turned and walked toward the door. Just as I was about to open it, I heard Mrs. Chen's hysterical roar from behind me. Chloe, don't be so smug. If your family hadn't refused to pay for your brother-in-law's house, do you think my son would have been pushed to this? It was all your fault. You forced him. You ruined him. I stopped and slowly turned back. I saw her face, twisted with rage, and I also saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. She knew she had let it slip. I didn't say anything. I just gave her a meaningful smile. Then, I pressed the stop button on my phone's recording app in my pocket. Mrs. Chen, thank you for this final, and most fatal gift. Judgment Day finally arrived. The courtroom was packed. The media, the public, everyone who had followed this case was here, waiting for the final verdict. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by my legal team. At the defendant's table, Ryan, Jessica, and Mrs. Chen sat in a row, all in prison uniforms, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Ryan's eyes were locked on me, filled with hatred, resentment, and a complex emotion I couldn't decipher. Jessica kept her head down, not daring to look at anyone. Mrs. Chen seemed to have been drained of all her energy, her gaze vacant. The trial was a one-sided slaughter. My legal team presented the evidence, piece by piece. The flawed insurance contract, Ryan's manipulative recording, the suspicious and massive fund transfers between him and Jessica, and the crucial, prepaid pension fund. Each piece of evidence was like a sledgehammer, striking the hearts of the three people at the defendant's table. Ryan's defense lawyer tried to explain everything away as coincidence and misunderstanding, but his arguments were flimsy and collapsed under the weight of the ironclad evidence. When it was my lawyer's turn for the final statement, Ms. Miller stood up. But instead of speaking, she first played one last recording. If your family hadn't refused to pay for your brother-in-law's house, do you think my son would have been pushed to this? It was all your fault. You forced him. You ruined him. I stopped and slowly turned back. I saw her face, twisted with rage, and I also saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. She knew she had let it slip. I didn't say anything. I just gave her a meaningful smile. Then I pressed the stop button on my phone's recording app in my pocket. Mrs. Chun, thank you for this final and most fatal gift. Judgment Day finally arrived. The courtroom was packed. The media, the public, everyone who had followed this case was here, waiting for the final verdict. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by my legal team. At the defendant's table, Ryan, Jessica, and Mrs. Chun sat in a row, all in prison uniforms, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Ryan's eyes were locked on me, filled with hatred, resentment, and a complex emotion I couldn't decipher. Jessica kept her head down, not daring to look at anyone. Mrs. Chun seemed to have been drained of all her energy, her gaze vacant. The trial was a one-sided slaughter. My legal team presented the evidence piece by piece. The flawed insurance contract, Ryan's manipulative recording, the suspicious and massive fund transfers between him and Jessica, and the crucial prepaid pension fund. Each piece of evidence was like a sledgehammer, striking the hearts of the three people at the defendant's table. Ryan's defense lawyer tried to explain everything away as coincidence and misunderstanding, but his arguments were flimsy and collapsed under the weight of the ironclad evidence. When it was my lawyer's turn for the final statement, Ms. Miller stood up. But instead of speaking, she first played one last recording. If your family hadn't refused to pay for your brother-in-law's house, do you think my son would? Mrs. Chen's hysterical roar echoed through the solemn courtroom. Ryan and Jessica's faces went ashen. Mrs. Chun herself looked as if she'd been struck by lightning, slumping in her chair. Your Honor, members of the jury, Ms. Miller's voice was calm and powerful. This recording was made by my client during a meeting with the defendant, Mrs. Chun, the day before the trial. I believe this recording reveals the fundamental motive behind this entire case: greed. For money, the defendant, Ryan Chun, was willing to murder his own wife. For money, the defendant, Jessica Jones, was willing to become a homewrecker and an accomplice to murder. For money, the defendant, Mrs. Chun, was willing to incite her son to commit a crime and then cover it up. They didn't just want the $2 million insurance payout. They coveted my client, Ms. Chloe Shaw's, entire family fortune. The moment Ms. Miller finished, the defendant's table erupted into chaos. It wasn't me. It was Ryan. He made me do it. Jessica was the first to break, pointing at Ryan and screaming. He said that once Chloe was dead, we could be together and get a ton of money. I was tricked by him. You're lying. Ryan jumped up, his face contorted in a snarl. It was you. You were the one whispering in my ear every day, saying Chloe wasn't good enough for me, that I deserved more. You seduced me. No. You coward. You can't even admit what you did. You bitch. If it weren't for you, I would never have ended up here. The two former lovers were now like rabid dogs in the courtroom, tearing each other apart, shifting blame, exposing their ugliest, filthiest sides for the world to see. And Mrs. Chun, watching her son and the woman she had once tacitly approved of turn on each other, finally broke down, letting out a despairing wail. The courtroom was in an uproar. The judge slammed his gavel, shouting for order until the scene was finally brought under control. I watched this ugly drama unfold with a heart of stone. This is human nature. In the face of immense personal gain and criminal charges, so-called love and family ties are fragile and worthless. In the chaos, I saw Ryan look up at me. His eyes no longer held hatred, only endless regret and despair. He opened his mouth, as if to say something, but I no longer wanted to hear it. There was nothing left to say between us. All that remained was a long overdue and righteous judgment. After a brief recess, the court delivered its final verdict. Ryan Chin, for attempted murder and insurance fraud, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Jessica Jones, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 10 years. Mrs. Chun, for incitement and obstruction of justice, was sentenced to 5 years. The moment the judge's gavel fell, I let out a long, slow breath. The war that had lasted for months was finally over. Walking out of the courthouse, the sun was shining. I looked up at the blue sky and felt the massive stone that had been weighing on my heart finally lift. My divorce proceedings also went incredibly smoothly. Because Ryan was the at-fault party and had illegally transferred marital assets, the court ruled that all our joint property would go to me. Ryan was left with nothing. He had lost not only his freedom but also the money and future he valued most. It was the most complete punishment for him. 6 months later, with the money I recovered and support from my parents, I established a foundation called Sunbeam. The foundation's mission is to provide free legal aid and psychological counseling to women who have suffered violence, betrayal, and injustice in their marriages. I hope my experience can be a light, illuminating the path for women still struggling in the dark. I want them to know they are not fighting alone. At the foundation's launch ceremony, I stood at the podium and looked out at the friends and family who had supported and encouraged me, and at the women who had come seeking help. Their eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and hope. My own eyes grew misty. In my past life, I died on a snowy slope in endless cold and despair. In this life, I am standing here, bathed in warm sunlight, surrounded by love and kindness. My life, after a long and violent blizzard, has finally entered its own spring. After the ceremony, I received a text message on my phone from an unknown number. The message was simple, just one sentence. I'm sorry. If there is a next life, I hope I can love you honorably. I didn't reply. I just calmly deleted the message. Ryan, there are no ifs between us, and there will certainly be no next life. You will pay for the life you owe me with 20 years of your freedom. And I, with my newfound strength, will live a good life for myself.